Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you again for the second circle. In this one, we are honored and delighted to have with us an icon in the world of architecture and indeed beyond architecture. I think we can say an icon in some of the basic fundamental philosophical principles of modern life, modern thought and identity. I know that we can talk to Mr. Abdel-Wahid El-Wakil, Professor of Contemporary Islamic Architecture, all night and into the morning. I had a lovely discussion with the gentleman which covered endless topics in which he interconnected them so seamlessly. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. And with that introduction, I'd like to request we extend a warm hand to Professor Abdel-Wahid El-Wakil. There's a lot to talk about, and the challenge, Professor, is to keep it also, for me to try and keep it simple and relatable so that everybody can understand what we're talking about, regardless of how deep our backgrounds are or not when it comes to architecture. So let me start, with your kind permission, Professor, with a very simple question. How does traditional architecture, and you are one of the monuments, I could say, of traditional architecture, how does it differ from modern architecture in the three main areas of the principles of philosophy, the substance or materials, and the craftsman? Just to set up our discussion before we get into, what does this mean for society, for the human? So how would you elaborate on and separate modern architecture from traditional architecture?
In building or in human nature?
Let's start with building, because human nature is a very deep one.
Modern architecture was like a new religion for the West, especially when there was a loss of the spiritual values, and the centering was on that we are going into a new world that is new materials, new technology, the mentality and philosophy of scientism, and that we shouldn't be following the mentality of the past generations. Nietzsche wrote, God is dead. There was total loss of religion and total loss of belief in God. And it started with the psychologist. Even Jung, after 40 years of research into people's minds, said, I have to admit that there is a God. But as a scientist, they all decided there was no God. So how did this come to architecture is that they believed the new materials was going to free them from past ideology, past architecture. There was steel, you could have high-rise buildings. There were elevators, you could go up more than 4 or 5 floors. Traditional cities never went beyond 7 floors. Paris, London, and the floors were categorized by social standards. For example, in Victor Hugo's novel Les Miserables, when Javert is chasing Jean Valjean, he goes and asks the reception, this man is living in which floor? Because if he's on the first floor, they call it piano nobile. So he knows that's a rich man, and then the Bohemians live on the third floor, and up to, you go up until you have the servants' floors at the very top, and you have the different classes. So the city was divided by levels concerning the height that people could climb. Then it changed. There were neighborhoods now, like in Cairo in Egypt, we had Zamalek was where the rich lived, and across the Nile in Mbaba were all the people serving Zamalek. They would cross by boat the river Nile and go and serve there. So there's always a servant city and a serf city. And there was in also when they did St. Petersburg in Russia, you had the outside streets, there were the houses, and the courtyard inside there, they have the people serving those houses. In England, you had the mews. So, like St. Regent's Park, where you have the beautiful houses around the park, and behind the mews, you have the people who served, drivers, so on. So the city changed from the point of new technologies like elevator, like steel. That is the material side. That changed.
How does that impact negatively modern society? Because I read some and I heard in one of the documentaries you were talking about when it comes to the philosophy or principles of design in traditional architecture, that the divine was in the middle and the concept of the community was in the middle. That's why you had courtyards in houses.
Yeah.
You had more public spaces, green spaces were greater, because the principles behind design, the philosophical principles, were different. And then in modern societies, we've done away with the principles of the importance of the community space, or we've limited it. And we've done away with the idea of putting the divine in the middle. You've put profit in the middle, or greed in the middle.
Yeah.
And we construct buildings closer, smaller, tighter, and more individualistic. What does that do to human society?
If you buy a painting by Picasso, Rembrandt, or whatever famous, which you spend millions in, is the painting around the frame, or the frame is around the painting? What happened in architecture is exactly, they put the frame in the middle, and the important thing you have to see, the painting, became the frame. It's the same with the architecture. In medieval times, in Oxford, in Paris, all the buildings were around courtyards. And they had the names also, the Court of Justice, the Court of whatever, any building, government was called the court.
Evoking the idea of collectivity.
Because the active social life was in the court. Lady of the Court, Oxford and Cambridge, all the colleges around the court. So people think that the court is something that is in Islamic countries because of privacy of women and because of climate, they take it as, the courtyard keeps the house cool during the day.
But there were deeper philosophical principles.
And it gives privacy to the women and all that, but it's not that. The courtyard was the main predominant protagonist in the house because it was the created world of God. And the house that was built around the courtyard was the man-fashioned world. So the priority was to put the created world in the center.
In the form of flowers, trees, fountain.
You had
The
even
natural
in
world.
the Victorian, you had two gardens, one with the flowers, as you see, and there was a back court which was called the kitchen garden, where they got all their food from it. And in America also, when they used to raise prices of food, the people used to plant in their gardens tomatoes, lemons, vegetables. And I remember in 1987, I think, it was International Year of Shelter for the Homeless, done by United Nations. And there were 75 nations who presented what home can you do for the homeless. And some people did capsules in plastic, some people did this one. And I took the theme for the future, for the homeless, the house as a unit of survival. And I won the competition because I treated the house as a unit of survival, where you have a garden, you can plant things, where you had all the sewage was treated to be used as fertilizer, where I had an oven that, like the Austrian coven oven, which is designed that the hot air doesn't go out directly, that it passes through.
Used for heating and other purposes.
Different chambers,
right.
So that and to heat the house. So and then I had in every house I had a workshop so that people can do crafts and sell them. I looked at the house as a survival unit. The others, people coming out from those mental schools of architecture, they want innovation, making capsules and balls and houses that inflate, and this is okay for refugees or something, but for people to live in, no.
It reminds me of, now that I'm hearing you talk of my childhood experiences growing up in the West and comparing it to some of my first visits to traditional homes in this part of the world, very old style built homes. And one of the things that struck me was how the central space, the courtyard area, that was the biggest room in the house. And the rooms for sleeping, what we would call in the modern lingo, bedrooms, were very small. They were literally just a place to sleep.
Exactly.
Whereas in what we call modern homes, the bedroom is massive, it has its own bathroom, it has its own TV, it has its own sometimes kitchenette. And you get the feeling that the philosophy is individualism, is to keep everyone cocooned, living separately under one roof, versus the other philosophy of keeping people together and engaged, right?
Yeah.
Now we come to, in modern architecture, this concept which I read you wrote about in the 1980s, the international style. How does that sever man, or man and woman, I should say, the human being, from his and her past? And how that impacts the identity question. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, until the 20th century, the house was a very difficult place to live in. For example, in England, they would freeze in the winter, they had to have coal. The coal used to pollute the air inside the house, and they had this spring cleaning they take all the curtains, everything to clean them because they would all be blackened by the soot. They didn't have kitchens that ease your cooking. They had to have a lot of servants. The water, they had to go from to get a river. There wasn't running water. So with the modern age, the house became very comfortable, and people became a culture seeking comfort. So they didn't accept the old philosophy that life is hardship and sacrifice and suffering. You created a cult of comfort. But apart from that, the building technology was very advanced. For example, we have a technology of building in our part of the world which is unbelievable in its advancement and intelligence, and that is the being able to build the most beautiful architecture with natural materials, especially bricks and stones. From Sinan in Turkey down to the very beginning of medieval times, you have a technology. When I went to Bukhara and Samarkand and Turkey and in Egypt, in Upper Egypt and the Morocco, India, the technology of building very advanced. Today, professors at university can't even come up to their knees, and they were giants, the people who built before. And that's what I found, that you can do the most beautiful buildings with this technology without saying concrete, and which concrete is a horrible material. Now that we have the climate problem, concrete is becoming the ugly duckling, because it produces, for 1 ton of concrete, produces 1 cubic meter of carbon dioxide. So they're changing it with polymers now, and I'm working on the technology of polymers. And there is a professor in France that has wrote a beautiful book and made a lot of research. He's the father of polymers, and he has a book on saying how the pyramids were built with these polymers, and even up to Roman times. So and now they're using it for roads when they're making motorways. So the technology, modern technology, was we reached a climax, but it's not true. It was a technology that was evil in the sense that it is destroying our natural world.
That's interesting. I also read that you said designing within a tradition is not a pretense for repeating the old, that traditional design is a complex process of adaptation. So the thought that came to my mind is there a role for technology in traditional design?
Beautiful question.
Is there, if you were to design, I know you don't like the word modern, so I'm not going to say modern city. If you're going to design a contemporary city.
Yeah, contemporary is the right word. Yeah.
Is there a role for technology, today's contemporary technology, to be incorporated,
of course,
in tradition? So what would it look like? Will we still have cars and roads like we know it?
Beautiful, yes. First of all, it's the mentality that if you are of this time, you have to be modern. When I was head of Department of Architecture here at Qatar Foundation, we used to have people coming from abroad. And there was one professor who came from MIT, and he's from the Arab world originally, I will not say where, but because they are in MIT and America, they promote this modern. So in a discussion, he sort of, put me down. You can't repeat the past. We're not repeating the past. We're bringing the past to the present.
By applying the same philosophical principles of life and architecture.
There is history. Man lives in space and cosmos, a space which is cosmos
and time.
And time. So you have space and time. Time is what? Is memory. The Bedouin, because he doesn't have a city, he doesn't have monuments. How does he keep time? They relate to the family tree because they don't have monument. So people always look for their history. It's very important. So this so supposedly professor, intellectual, imagine what he puts in the people's mind. And they teach the students, you have to be creative. And creative, they don't know what the word creative means. Creative is do design according to the created order of God. It doesn't mean being different. This is the word creative. And original doesn't mean you are different from your other colleagues. Original means going back to the origin. So they teach the students to have an inferiority complex, and they teach them to be frustrated because they tell them you do not copy, you have to be original.
And do you think it makes us to sever our connections with the past?
It is people who are teaching without studying the psychology of education. When I started teaching, I started reading Jean Piaget, which is the pedagogue. He surpassed Freud and Jung, and his books he wrote on the development of the intelligence in the child, and he has a book on the concept of space, how people experience the external world. And when we had with the Prince of Wales the School of Architecture, it was a disaster because when we had the meeting, they all came to try and do what the Prince of Wales, King Charles, wanted to re-establish tradition in England. So I was called to be one of the advisors for the Prince of Wales, and we'd have the meeting, and they all came with their old baggage. And then I said we should have in the meeting Professor Seymour Papert, who was a mathematician, worked with Jean Piaget. And he was the first person to create an artificial intelligence language for computers, which was called Logo, and was used for the Apple Turtle to teach students how to make patterns. And all those patterns were, of course, what was being used in traditional Islamic architecture. And they didn't get him. And I was saying, if you want to do school, bring the psychologist who could tell you how to teach young people how to, in the shortest of time, and optimize their learning curve. They didn't. They came with their old baggage, put a statue of Michelangelo, draw it. So they are like a horse having blinkers.
Blinkered thinking.
Yeah, they are in their line. They don't see what there's, and some of the professors never built anything, so they don't know
the reality of connecting people with.
I was visiting professor in University of Miami, and I was teaching fifth-year students, and I found that it was a disaster. there was a girl that made the kitchen counter 1 foot. I told her, you never cooked an egg? The counter is 2 feet.
Well,
started crying. 5th year student.
It's the ready-made microwave culture.
So they got annoyed with me. They said you gave them bad grades. And the same happened here also. They want to give the students good grades because they are not there to learn, they're there to get certificates.
What?
And the funny thing is I took the challenge. I told them they know nothing the way you're teaching them. And they said, well, I said, get a contractor, bring bricks here, and what I gave them as theory, let's see how they'll build it. And I got them to build arches and so on, and everything collapsed. I told them, you see? Because what happened in Europe, they had this blue collar and white collar. And education was, you know, we are MIT professors, we are MIT graduates, we are Oxford, we are Cambridge. But the practical side, no, you're a workman, blue collar. So there was a schism between education and practice. And they were arguing in this meeting. We used to have those debates on how to create the School of Architecture for the Prince of Wales. And they were talking of, you know, we have first theory and then in summer we have workshops. I told them it's combined.
Right.
It's not something
to integrate life into what you're doing.
Yeah, they don't respect the craftsman. The craftsman has a skill and knowledge. You watch some people that do things with their hands. They're faster than machines.
This segues nicely then to the question of personal questions about you. Because of course the circle is about, we cover different topics every month. But the common denominator is we always love to talk to individuals who've contributed in solving and addressing a challenge facing society, facing a community in a positive way against all odds. So you could have, I mean, you're now a very recognized and distinguished architect, but there was a time when you were beginning in your career. What made you set out on the course of trying to revive the principles of traditional architecture rather than simply going in the direction of so many of the students you've described who just got the good grades, maybe you would have had an easier time getting a good paid job and don't have to swim against the stream? What made you embark on this direction?
Disappointment and shock. I graduated in 1965 and I was appointed as instructor at university because I came out with a very high degree in marks. In fact, I was the first of my class. And I had to teach after I graduated, so what to teach? In '67, I had a terrible shock. And that was the 6-day war we had in Egypt, where we were humiliated and defeated in 3 days. Our whole Air Force was destroyed in the first hour. And we had a humiliation when Israel took all the Sinai. It was a very shock because we had a dictator who told us we have aeroplanes, we have everything, and that we are a nation that is going into the modern world. And
so that shocked your faith in modernity and the principles of modernity as the foundation of modern societies and community?
It shocked me because at the time they said you have to, as a university staff, that we have to have military training. And we had the secret police, we had the Gestapo in Egypt. And I said, what, go and train with guns? You have how many millions in Egypt that can carry guns compared to the population of Israel? It's not by guns that we have to, as a nation, we have to have our knowledge, education. I mean, what are we producing?
So that made you think. I imagine you've run up against a lot of centers of power.
I said, what can I do as an architect for my country? And then I saw all the horrible, ugly buildings we were doing. And one German architect came to Egypt, and I was showing him the old architecture. And he said, what, you people are stupid? You have the most beautiful traditional architecture here. Why are you doing our mediocre copies of our German houses, which was blocks like this, to a staircase with 2 apartments and placed like that? And all of a sudden I said, this is what they're teaching us, and we're copying the West. This architecture is from your country, but done apingly. We're aping your architecture. So I started to think about my architecture, and then some people told me, don't waste your time. Already somebody has been doing this. I said, who? Hassan Fathy. Who's Hassan Fathy? 5 years at university, nobody mentioned him, and the world knew him. He was banned from our universities. And I went and I saw this man, and I saw his culture, and I saw what he did to solve the housing problem in Upper Egypt. And he took the study from the Nubian architecture, which was very advanced and was a heritage from pharaonic times. They could build the vault without shuttering, and the professors were thinking of how to support the bricks until they built this vault and this dome. And these people were building it on the air.
And not only that, but from what I understood, cost effectively too, which is usually the argument of the modern architect, is we need to build these egg boxes because they're more cost effective. And yet
it's not true.
There are examples.
It's not true.
Right.
I did the biggest mosque in Jeddah, the King Saud Mosque. I did a 20-meter dome in brick. The engineers refused to sign it without having steel in it. So I signed it, and they told me, you're not an engineer, and you signed this. If anything goes wrong, you'll be in prison. Nobody will get you out, even King Fahd. And I said, I would take the risk. I wanted to prove it because I knew I would never have that chance again.
So what drove you? What drove you to stay steadfast? You're taking risk, as you said.
Yeah.
You're taking huge risk.
Yeah, the mayor of Jeddah said, go and get that paper you signed. And Bin Laden, who was the contractor, he said, put it in a safe. And this is how we're going to get rid of El-Wakil, because he was furious. I wanted to build in bricks, and he just wanted to pour.
So he's waiting for the building to collapse to get rid of you.
Yeah.
So
he was.
You must have. It's obvious from your story that you must have encountered a lot of circles of power when you're preaching traditional architecture. You're going against a lot of powerful people in construction, in planning, in industry.
I was threatened with my life.
That's what I wanted to.
Yeah. I was threatened that while on site, a bulldozer or a bucket from the crane would hit me. And it happened to an Italian bricklayer in South Africa. He was knocked off, fell 3 floors into the spikes of rebars of steel.
Well, thankfully, obviously, that hasn't happened to you. But did you ever feel?
You see a ghost in front of you?
You look pretty much in one piece, thank God. Were there moments when you had any doubt about not your ideas, but whether you can continue this? And if you did, how did you get through it? Because I think that might be an important message to share with people who are...
Yeah, I had a Pakistani engineer, project construction manager, who is living now in Canada, and he told me, Mr. Wakil, you're a charlatan. And I told him, I'm a charlatan. He said, yes, we never worked with a consultant that you are going to build this dome without engineering drawings, structural drawings, and you are basing it on your ideas of having seen cracks in old domes. And I used to study the old buildings, see where they go wrong. And time passed, and he was very furious. He used to report me, and this guy is not a professional. He's using the site as an experiment. We are professionals who want drawings, who want this. And at the end, when we were building the biggest dome, I went up there. It was 40 meters high, and he saw my face yellow. He told me, you're scared, Mr. Wakil. I said, I'm petrified. Because really, if anything went wrong, I'd be in prison until today. And I told him, listen, I'm daring, but I'm not crazy. And I'm scared. And then he told me, don't worry, we're taking good care of everything, the mortar. We're not worried.
So the support of others.
From charlatan, he was telling me now, we're not worried. Having worked with me, they saw it was a very high learning curve, and they all were promoted at Bin Laden managers, because they always wanted to get managers for American or British. And when I chose the Pakistanis from the Arab world, they were the second-class people,
They felt empowered.
Yeah, because they have this foreigner complex, And in a way, I don't blame them, because also when you come and you look at the education in the Arab world, you have very bad standards.
Right. All right.
I mean, if people want a doctor's degree, where do they go? To England or America?
Right. But I think the message to diffuse from that is the ability to win over others and the people to work with you in order to support your mission. Might be an important time now. With your kind permission, Professor, we're going to open the floor up for questions from people, for people to ask the questions. The lighting is very strong, ladies and gentlemen, so I will try to see hands, but if I fail, I think Sam has got the microphone.
But one thing I want to add, because we are not doing this traditional work just because of fashion, not because of Mickey Mouse architecture or Walt Disney, which is happening now. They are faking. They have a wind tower that doesn't work as a wind tower. They
pseudo-traditionalism.
Yeah, they have reclining walls in concrete that aren't mud walls, which used to recline tradition. So it is a fiasco. It is like a theater. It's like Walt Disney. And one sentence will explain this. Tradition is the living spirit of the dead. But traditionalism, as we see it now, is the dead spirit of the living.
Very profound.
So one is the living spirit of the dead, of the past.
Right.
And today it's the dead spirit of the living. And that is why those professors who say we can't repeat the past and so on, they are in a way destructive, because Without the past, you have no memory. And a man who has no memory, they say he has amnesia, or has become mentally damaged by age.
Right.
Like what I would be in a few years.
No, Allah
you'll have
يحفظك
an
إن شاء الله.
interview and I won't remember anything.
الله يعطيك طول العمر
But this is life.
والعافية إن شاء الله.
But this is
After,
what they're doing in education,
right.
and this is the message that is important. Those professors, they call them mujaddidin, innovators. And Plato, in his Republic, banned those people. He said he banned the artists from his Republic for unwarranted innovations. And when you look around you today, you have to judge as a public. Is this warranted or isn't it warranted?
Warranted in the meaning that it's serving the
Are
community.
you doing this innovation because you have advanced in your knowledge?
Right.
Or, I mean, if you have a good plumbing system, this is not an innovation. It's a development of getting rid of all the waste that is happening.
Right.
But is it an innovation if you have an inclined building?
Right.
How do you get the pipes to go down straight from all the toilets when you have a building that is curved? What's or a building that looks like an egg? You see, and what is the relationship with the other building next to you? If you look at the beautiful cities, like, for example, when they planned London, you had all St. Regent's Park, you had all the buildings the same, beautiful. In Paris of the 18th and 19th century, you have a harmony in the city. What they did is they played with the fenestration and the ornament. And ornament also is important because in Arabic and in the Quran, you have zina and zukhruf. Zina is warranted, zukhruf is not. And the difference in it in English is ornate, to make ornate, and the other decorum. Decorum is adding on. But ornate, it is integral design.
Right.
So the beauty is not made by makeup, it is part of
Integral part of
the body itself.
Right. Okay. With your kind permission, may we open up for questions from the audience? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people would love to ask you.
You ran out of questions, Felix?
I've got plenty, but I think some people would love to ask their questions as
All right.
well. So to be fair to them,
Yeah.
and we did promise people in the circle we'd give. Okay, I can see there's a hand. I'm going to rely on Sam, I think, to do most of the selection, but I can see one hand there. We get a microphone, please.
I can't see even the public.
Well, they are there, I can assure you.
I would like to have a clarification about the question that you made before
Have
about
to put the light on him. I can't see.
For next circle, sir, maybe. I think now is a bit difficult.
Difficult to put light.
To change
I've
all
been
the
blinded
lighting.
for an hour. Let's put the light on them now.
hello.
Yeah.
I used to live in Venice for 10 years, and the city,
Yeah.
it was something strange, because for many people it was like an amazing city, but for some people that they were visiting, they were seeing in it like an old city full of structures that they are falling down. They didn't see the beauty of the city. For this reason, I thought that sometime we have the issue of educating the people that we are building for them, because in other field, like in food, they are educating the people that eating fast food, it will make for you bad health. But in architecture,
If you eat bad food.
They're eating bad
Keep
food
the
that
mic away
produces
a bit because it's
bad
making
health.
bad resonance.
The bad food produces bad health.
Yeah, but architecture, nobody is explaining that bad architecture will make for you a bad life. people, they are not understanding this, and we are following their requests. They are not following our recommendations.
So what's the question?
The question, who is the responsible to put this idea and give it to the people that we are working for them?
Who's responsible for reframing, I think the question is, reframing the concept of architecture as something that should be serving the community's real needs and identity rather than what modern architecture is producing? Thank you very much. So give the microphone please to Sam.
Well, it is not about somebody who to do that. The problem is deeper than that. The problem is that our spiritual values have been lost. And when they are lost, the devil is very happy to enter the scene. I remember one beautiful passage in Dostoevsky, who was a psychologist before even Freud or anything. In his novel, The Brothers Karamazov, one brother was an atheist and was writing that there is no God. And then when his brother killed the father, he said this is the devil, the work of the devil. And then he said, because there's the devil, there must be a God. So I have a cartoon of the devil with his lance and the 3 prongs. And the 3 prongs, the middle one, the top one, represents ignorance. The second represents greed. And the third represents egotism and selfishness. People who don't want to serve the community, people who don't want to help their brothers thanks to the greed. And the problem now in the West is this materialism. And that's why you have today, the poorer are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer, and the environment is coming to a situation where the earth can be destroyed. So it's not a matter of telling who it is, it's a matter of bringing back to our world, our young generation, the spiritual values that created great societies in the past. The people who built Venice were businessmen who created one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Nobody's interested in that anymore.
Right. All right, perhaps we'll give an opportunity. I don't want to overlook this side as well. So if anybody, do we have any hands raised? Sam, can you see on the right side?
I have a question here.
Okay, all right, then
okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very inspired by the talk, and I know the works of the Professor Abdel-Wahid. Sure.
Sorry, are you able to come out? So
Yes.
There we go.
I'd like to see who's
Okay,
asking the
we'll bring them out to you.
Yes. Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm very inspired by your works, and I think you had a great vision. You were able to achieve it through the last years as well. Yeah. So my question is about the environmental aspect of your work in architecture, because we all know the impact of modern architecture, per se, on the carbon footprint that manufacture concrete, and also the amount of energy needed to cool the buildings and heat the buildings sometimes as well. But we understand from your work that you were focusing about having green architecture that is have less carbon footprint on the environment, and using traditional architecture is the way, or could be a way, to save our future, and of course having less environmental impact. So would you please shed some light on this aspect, and how is your work contributing to be a green architecture for the environment?
First of all, from cost, when
Please.
I did the King Saud Mosque, we got contractors to evaluate how much the cost of that building is. they always gave twice the amount of money that was spent on doing that mosque. And that was a proof that by building with traditional means, you can save up to 40% of the cost of a building. Because you have bricks that are only fired, and today the bricks are very advanced, the factories that do them, the burning of the bricks, the structure, the power of a brick is better than concrete, because you have bricks from Roman times existing today, but you have buildings, all the buildings that were done in concrete have been demolished in the Arab world. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, they deteriorate very badly. Traditional buildings, no. So you have the advantage of the lifespan of a building. You have the advantage of reducing the cost up to 40%. You have the advantage of giving work opportunity for the underprivileged communities of the Arab world and the Muslim world. And you have climatic advantage because a concrete building, I remember in Riyadh when they did the concrete houses for the University of Riyadh, and I had a friend, colleague, professor there, thin concrete walls, it was like an oven. But if you have thick brick walls, the brick, you know,
helps to regulate the temperature with the traditional material.
I have graphs, it's scientific, it's not something we put in laboratory. We show the levels, the K factor goes to 135 with the bricks. In concrete, it's about 30 or something. So you get how many times the amount of heat coming from outside.
So that helps to reduce consumption
and
for
in the winter,
cooling and heating.
Also, it helps keeping the warmth in the house. So, if we're taken to a science course, they have no argument.
So why isn't this pursued and taught more as an option for green?
Because of this inferiority complex. If you don't do, it's like if you work against the material world we're having there, why would the contractor threaten an architect by killing him or a workman? They don't want this. It's not money making. But I always say, why today this Western industry hasn't succeeded in our Muslim world? Is it because the Muslims are morons, idiots? Malaysia, Korea, all these other countries, they have a higher intelligence. We are more back to the ape, as Darwin assumes our culture is. We're closer to the ape than to the modern human being. No. It's because of our history. Culture has a history in their genes. It's not only in their literature and their books and so on. The culture, I think, the Muslim culture didn't produce all those miracles. We don't have car factories, don't have television factories and so on, because I think that in our genes, we don't understand it, but in our genes, we reject this evil technology that now the world is proving that it will destroy us. We are 1.5 now degrees higher in climate. They are saying after 2 degrees. In fact, today you can't get the beautiful rice, the good rice that from Japan that was made for sushi. You can't get the good wine in France that used to be there. There is a big change in the agriculture, and this is our food. We are
destroying ourselves.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe do we have a question this side? I don't want to overlook. Okay. Sam, do you see any hands to ask any further questions? Okay. Could we get a microphone to the hand that's raised?
Thank you. I would like to know...
Could I ask you to come, if you don't mind? Sorry for the imposition, but Professor would like to see.
Okay.
Okay.
And 1 foot microphone away from your mouth.
Yeah, I would like to thank for sharing your experience. And
Getting already deaf at
No,
80.
he's thanking you for sharing your experience, Professor.
And I would like to know if that is possible to implement the tradition in huge developments or
we're not
high-rise
dangerous.
buildings.
In
High-rise buildings or huge developments. Because
Can-
when we are talking about tradition, sometimes it looks like we are attached to small-scale buildings or developments. I
okay.
would like to know how can we develop high-rise
Come
buildings.
closer. I'm not going
Can
to
you
eat you.
can we have traditional architecture in the form of high-rise buildings? Can the principles of traditional architecture be applied in high-rise buildings or only buildings of few number of floors?
Okay, because we have a lot of
Come
bad
this
examples.
side a bit, yeah.
We have like a lot of bad examples here in Doha of kind of fake towers that they just try to replicate Islamic architecture, but most of the times they just fail. It is possible to do it without just
Your first
copy-pasting?
question is why do you need high-rise buildings?
That's a good question.
If you are going to discuss something on a scientific basis, you have to ask why I am doing this. Why do you have a high-rise building? Can you answer a question like that? Are you an architect?
Yes,
Good.
because I'm not a client, that's why.
No. Why do you think you need high-rise buildings? What is the pros and cons? In every scientific investigation, you have to see the pros and the cons. For example, a car can get you very fast. Before, the curve between a man walking and a man not walking was a horse. That was the fastest. So this was going at 4 miles an hour. This one is going at 20 miles. Now the difference between a man walking at 4 miles and you have Concorde going at
The speed of sound.
the speed of sound. So the curve between the man who does not have an aeroplane and the one who has an aeroplane is that high. That's the difference. But how much is the cost of a Concorde? It was too expensive, they stopped it. How much is the cost of walking? Huh? It's a pair of Nike shoe maybe. So the same with high rise. All the cities were, if you go and go to a tower here in Doha and look at the city of Doha, it's all 2.5 floors except one part of it where there are the office towers in West Bay. So let's ask a question. Why do we need high rise and what is the limit of floors that you can have in a city like Doha? As a professional, how do you establish this?
I don't know.
You have to have standards. For example, I was talking to a minister of culture and I was complaining about the bad music that we have today that is put in hotels and restaurants, so on. Everywhere you have this horrible music. And once I was having lunch in a hotel here, and I said, we're having a business meeting, we don't want this music. So I called the manager, a German guy, and I told him, we don't need this music, we're not gonna chance rock and roll here or break dancing. He said it's a matter of taste. And then a minister of culture gave me that answer also once in a restaurant. And I was not nice to him. I said, I'm disappointed that you as a minister of culture say it's a matter of taste. Some people have bad taste. You judge music, art, by standards. For example, if you have a bodybuilding competition, the jury studies the chest, the legs, the muscles of the hand. They have standards by which they give the Mr. Universe or Miss Universe. The waist, the hips, everything is judged by standards. So it's not everybody can do anything, and then we say, because it's art, it's a matter of taste. No. What is an artist who puts a dead cow with flies in a box and you have it in the museum? Why? Why do you force us to accept things that have no base to our intelligence or our culture? So I'm asking you the question, why are you talking about high rise? Is it a lack of space?
In this case, as you pointed out, I guess that is more about greed, as you said.
It's about ego. Why should Dubai have the tallest tower in the world?
Right.
Why?
So about connecting with more foundational principles and philosophy. Thank you very much for your question. I'm conscious of the fact that I think it's dinner time. We don't want to keep them for too long, but I really appreciate...
Scientifically, you have to ask, why are we having dinner?
Maybe we can discuss that over dinner, Professor. That might be the best way to tackle that question. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to extend a very warm hand to Professor Abdel-Wahid El-Wakil. Thank you so much. And I hope you will stay with us for dinner.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many people may come and ask you, hopefully not why are we having dinner, but many other questions.
No, I will say, what do you think I came for?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us.
You took dinner, there he came.
Okay. Functional.
So,
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight.
Come.
Bon appetit. And see you in the next circle. We hope that you found this inspirational and it leaves us with some food for thought as well. Thank you very much.